Good evening. Welcome to our scientific evenings of University of Nova Gorica. Tonight, it is my honor and great pleasure to welcome among us our special guest and speaker, Professor Alain Deloire. He is recognized as one of the best international experts and consultants in viticulture and has been already invited as a speaker or expert in most of the world regions involved in wine production. Professor Deloire has started his career working for 10 years as a researcher and viticulture team leader at famous champagne house Moët Chandon in France, of course. He has been working for the following 14 years as a professor in grapevine and fruit ecophysiology at Montpellier SupAgro and 3 years at Stellenbosch University in South Africa, where he was the head of Department of Viticulture and Enology. From 2014 to 2016, he was a director of the National Wine and Grape Industry Centre at Charles Sturt University in Wagga Wagga, Australia. Since November 2016, he is back in France, working at Montpellier SupAgro. Professor Deloire is a co-author of several books on grapevine physiology and terroir, and has published more than 70 industry journal articles, as well as more than 50 peer-reviewed articles. I was privileged to meet him for the first time in Geisenheim, and he has then undoubtedly made a great impression on me, as I am sure he will do on you tonight too. Today he will share with us his knowledge and thoughts on the concept of terroir, nowadays one of the most used terms in relation to high-quality wines all over the globe. Professor Deloire, the floor is yours. Please.
So thank you very much. And again, it's my pleasure to be in Slovenia for the first time. And I think I love this country, so I will come back often, I hope. And thank you to the university for inviting me. So let's get started. So I'm going to share with you some information on the concept of terroir. You will see it's a concept for discussion because it's not so simple. But let's go through the slides, and you will see what I would like to share with you. So, of course, we have to start somewhere. So the word terroir, of course, is coming from the Latin territorium. And in the 17th and 19th centuries, this word was established, the terroir was established as a geographical term, and it was employed to describe the characteristic of an homogeneous physical area. And you will see this has evolved during centuries and during years. So, speaking about terroir, I would like to tell you that terroir is not a scientific disciplinary. Terroir is a concept, meaning that terroir is a multidisciplinary concept. Okay, this is important to understand. So we cannot say that someone is an expert in terroir. You are expert in grapevine. You are expert, for example, in soil science. You are expert in grapevine physiology. You are expert in biochemistry. You are expert in wine composition. I mean biochemistry, and you are expert on sensory science. And all those expertises will help you to understand what the terroir is about. But the terroir as well is about people. You will see, is about history, and is about market and marketing, and it's about consumer, okay? So it's a multidisciplinary concept, and it's a bit a complex concept. So to start to describe the concept, I think it's obvious for you that the climate will play a key role in the terroir concept, meaning that the temperature, the light, the wind, the air humidity, the water through irrigation or rainfall will impact very strongly on plant physiology and berry composition, and of course, the potential style of wine. Okay? So, of course, climate will be, across all those parameters, will be a strong driver to understand what terroir will bring to the wine. I want to tell you as well that terroir is not limited to wine only. You can have terroir for cheese, perhaps you can have terroir for meat, you can have terroir for olives, for coffee. Coffee is a good example of a product which is linked to terroir, like cheese. So you can have terroir for a lot of agronomical or food products, okay, not only for wine. So, speaking about the climate, it's important to understand that when we speak about terroir, we have to agree on at which level are we going to study the climate, okay? So the first approach will be at the region level, we call it the macroclimate, or when you go down, when you downscale, we speak about mesoclimate or topoclimate, which will be a group of plots, a group of vineyards, or just a small, very small region, or even one vineyard. And then if you want to understand the vine physiology or berry composition or the impact of the climatic factors like light or temperature on fruit composition, then you have to work at the microclimatic level. Okay, so you have to focus. So when we do study actually terroir, we start at that level, for example, with weather station, and we downscale up to the vine, up to the plant. Okay. Now to describe the climate, I don't want to give a lecture here, but to describe a climate, you have what we call climatic indices. And that one is interesting, is what we call the Egeland Indices, which is a French indices. And these climatic indices will allow to classify the regions according to temperature. So it's a sum of temperature. And this will allow you to know, as a first approach, which variety you can plant in such a climate. Okay? So it's going from warm, very warm, to very cool. And this is the calculation of the Egeland index, which has been done by Katia. And you see that this is a region in Australia, which is a warm, very warm region. And we put the threshold at 3,000, meaning that it's a very warm region. And you see that she did the calculation from 1950 to 2016. And you see that it's a way to represent that temperature is increasing. I don't want to speak about climate change and all this stuff yet, but the point is something is happening with the temperature, because over the season, since I will say perhaps according to the indices since 1990 and mainly 2005, we see that the temperatures are increasing. So we don't know if this is stable or if the temperature will decrease in the next years, but this is what we can do with these indices. You have another indices, which is what we call the fresh night index, which is the minimum temperature during the day, and of course it's the night temperature. And this is interesting to classify the region, or to classify a small region, or to classify at least a group of vineyards. And this will give you an indication on how the nights are fresh or warm. Okay? So I will explain the interest a bit later on. And you see the calculation done by Katia. Here we put 18 meaning that the nights are warm, okay? And remember, it's the same region. It's a Griffith region in Australia, which is a warm to very warm region. So not only the days are warm, but the nights are warm as well, as you can see. And the night temperature since a few years are increasing, okay? So this will strongly impact on the physiology of the vine. This will strongly impact on the composition of the fruit and the style of wine, okay? So this is important to understand the impact of this parameter on the, yes, on the functioning of the vine and the composition of the fruit and to a certain extent the composition of the wine. So we had a lot of discussion since I'm here, and it could be extremely interesting for you guys if you want to describe your region in Slovenia, if it's not done, to use such indices to characterize your regions and to see exactly where you are. We had a lot of discussion on it's warm or it's hot, and it's a way to see if it's really warm or hot or if it's temperate, okay? So this is a way to classify. And that can help you if you have to grow new grapes. This can help you to decide on perhaps the cultural practices like irrigation, or to decide on which varieties you want to plant if you, because you can, with these indices, you can adapt the varieties to the climate. So it's a first entry point, okay? Start with water, we'll finish with wine. Okay, next. So, as I said, speaking about the dynamic of ripening, for example, it's important to understand that ripening is something which is occurring during the day and during the night. During the night, a fruit is not sleeping. During the night, the fruit continues to have an activity, okay? So ripening is during the day and during the night. So, here, it is just a very recent publication from my colleagues from Montpellier, and they did show that during the night, you have some specific genes that are expressed. And this is important in terms of fruit composition and wine composition and probably wine styles. So this is a nice way to, with a really strong research, to show that ripening is as well over the night, okay? So night and days matters. We spoke about the climate, and now we are going just to evocate the soil, okay? The soil is part of the concept of terroir, and in English, the association or the interaction between climate and soil is called a site, because some English people, somehow they don't really like the terroir concept because they think this is an European stuff, this is a French stuff, and well, it's a bit complicated for them. So they prefer to speak about site. And the site is just climate and soil, okay? And that's fine. I have no problem with that. Anyway, I have no problem with anything. So the role of the soil is, of course, for the root system, and the soil is very important in terms of water supply. Okay, the soil is very important, and of course, mineral, nitrogen, and potassium supply. So, what is, except for the water, and except for some very important compounds like nitrogen and potassium, actually we don't really know the role of the soil. We don't really know how the soil will impact on berry composition and will impact on the style of wine. A lot of people will tell you this wine has this typicality, has this style because of the soil. In fact, that's a bit short in terms of thinking. We don't really know how the soil is impacting, in fact, except for, as I said, water and nitrogen and probably potassium. So this is still a research question. I'm not saying that there is no relationship. I'm just saying that to make a link between the soil and the style of wine, it's a bit too direct, okay? In between, you have a lot of processes and phenomena that will occur. So that's for the soil. I'm just going to give you some snapshots, okay, of what the terroir concept is, okay? This is now part of the terroir. You have the varieties, you have the cultivars, and of course, within the variety, you have the clones. So, that's not a problem. It's okay. We have a saying in France is when this is happening, you have to offer to me a box of wine. But that's okay. We'll see after. Yeah, but this is why the wine has to be special. So, oops, sorry, I just want. So the variety and the clone is very important as well, as you can imagine. And I don't want to discuss a lot on that because it's not enough to have a soil and a climate. You need to plant something, okay? That's totally obvious. So let's move on. The enological process is part of the terroir, and the enological process is very important. For those who did attend yesterday's seminar, which was fantastic, and after the presentation of our colleagues from Bordeaux, and that's something you know because you are professional, the enological process is very important and is part of the terroir, okay? So, but having said that, if you need to have good grapes to make like a good wine, with grapes which are not that qualitative, it's a bit difficult to get something which will be like an icon wine or a super premium. So you need to start to work in the vineyard to get something which is qualitative, and then the process will just transform something which is qualitative. But here we speak about transformation. So, yeah, so that's a method that I would like to propose as well. Just be safe when you do that, and this is what we call it, I don't know how to call that in English, but that was used over years in France and in a lot of countries to press grapes, okay? So we have a lot of old drawings showing that. Typicality. Until now, I spoke about wine style. So now I'm going to speak about typicality, and for that, I need to give you a definition, okay? So, typicality is a consensus on the test between the tester. And this is part of the foundation of the appellations, meaning that you have people who are in a site, in a terroir, in a site, soil, climate. They put a variety, I don't know, for example, Merlot Cab in Bordeaux. And then now they get wines out of that. And it's not enough. So they have to meet and they have to decide what will be, they have to choose what typicality they want from the potentiality of the terroir. It's very important to understand that. The terroir will drive the potentiality. The terroir will drive the potentiality. The site, okay, the cultivar, the cultural practices, the enological techniques. But it is the winemakers, it is you guys who are going to decide in this region, among various wines, you are going to decide, according to the potentiality, which typicality you want to be known for. You decide, not the terroir. Okay? It's very important to understand. This is the foundation of the appellation. Okay, so actually, if you want to create a new appellation in France, okay, you have to show that you have a specific typicality. So that will normally it takes 20 years, okay, to get there. So it's a long process. So it's an agreement on the test, okay? This is the best definition of typicality. Because as you can imagine, and we have an expert with Guillaume here, wine aromas is something which is a bit complex. Okay, so for that, wine tasting and sensory is extremely important. And wine tasting and sensory, we can talk a lot about that, but it's key. To define typicality, it is key. It's something which is key, okay? Which is extremely important. And it's mainly linked to the brain, okay? So that's something you have to think about. We had a very interesting seminar today presented by Professor Gilles de Revel from Bordeaux. And all of us, we have different way of tasting, okay? And we don't perceive the aromas the same manner. So that is something you have to know. And this is the same for all the food products which claim that they have a relationship with terroir, okay? So, and yeah, when you are a member of a confrérie, you need some tools sometimes to, you need a bit of equipment. Okay, now I'm going to try to illustrate my presentation with 1, 2, 3, 4 examples. So meaning that it's just for discussion, because speaking about terroir, you have various ways to speak about terroir, various ways to speak about terroir. So the way I did choose is to give you some examples to show you how the definition of typicality is really a bit complex, okay? So that is interesting for discussion because people are talking about terroir since the last 50 years or 60 years, and we will continue to talk about terroir for the next 200 years. So it's really under discussion, okay? And about terroir, we still have a lot of research questions, okay? So I will show you a French example. This is Chablis, it's typically French for me, and then we will go through an example in 2 examples or 3 examples in South Africa. Okay. So this is, in February, I went to Chablis with our students, and we had a very nice presentation from the interprofessional committee. And of course, we have asked them, but what is your terroir? What Chablis is about? Chablis is Chardonnay, okay? The variety is Chardonnay. And they have a very nice presentation. We had a fantastic wine tasting. And this is the way they do present terroir to everybody in the world, to the sommelier, to the journalists. And I wanted to show that. So, first of all, they strongly believe that the soil they have, which is more the subsoil, which is chiméridien. So chiméridien, which is something which has been done 150 million years ago, because there were a warm sea, which did cover Chablis. This soil is containing some fossils, which are small oysters, okay? And those oysters are called Exogyra virgula. Don't remember that, not important. And this is, according to them, it's because they have this subsoil that they strongly believe that the subsoil, this type of subsoil, is driving the wine typicality. Fantastic, no? It's magic. So, this is the soil, and these are the fossils of the small oysters. Okay? It's what they believe. They say, no, it's unique in the world. And I did a bit of tweet on that, and immediately I got a tweet back from England, because now they are doing Champagne and Chardonnay, and the guy said, we have better chiméridien soil. So, still under discussion. So what they have is what they call climat. Climat is just a block, a parcel, a vineyard, which is extremely well delimited because of the soil, because you have different soils. You can just walk 1 meter. I'm not going to walk 1 meter because of the camera, but you can walk 1 meter, and you go from a soil to another. So that's one thing. And they present the terroir about the soil, the geology, the climate, and they say this has been worked by people. People are very important, okay? And then they say, okay, Chablis, it's simple. It's what I told you, plus it's one variety, a subsoil, and a know-how, which has been done since generations. Everything has changed, as you can imagine. But they think that, there is a sort of continuity, and they have a small vineyard, and it's quite unique. And this is how they sell the terroir, because it's very important to be proud of where we are and to sell what we have, including to sell it related to history and tradition. This is part of the concept of terroir. And then, of course, they have, like everywhere in France, a nice delimitation. And this is, for example, what we call a premier cru. And then they have as well what they call grand cru. And then we did a fantastic testing from premier cru to grand cru. And you won't believe me, each wine, according to where it's coming from, is different. There is no discussion about that. It's different. So you cannot say anything. You say you are right, guys, because the wines are excellent, honestly, top Chardonnay, and they are different. What can you say? That's the reality. It's different. So then we went in the vineyard, and here you have a certain type of soil, and if you cross the road, you have another type of soil. The wine will be different. It's not the same climate as well. Micro-mesoclimate. It's different. And then here you see you have what they call a slope. And like in Burgundy or in Champagne, the first cru are always in the top of the soil. And like in Champagne and in Burgundy, at the top of the hill, you always have the forest. Why? They keep the forest to avoid erosion. Erosion? And the other point is they keep the forest because the forest keeps the water, and that's one of the secrets of Burgundy, for example. And when the summer are dry, the water will come from the forest, from the soil from the forest. So you have an underwater which is flowing between the soil and the subsoil. And that was shown in Burgundy a few years ago by the University of Burgundy. And that's an interesting observation about the terroir. So they put the Grand Cru at the top, and at the bottom, of course, it will be more the Premier Cru, for example. Okay, this is a bit the story of Chablis. Again, this is just, when we did visit, unfortunately, we had a bit of fog, but you see here vineyards, that's the Grand Cru, and that's like here you will have like a Premier Cru. So this is the story, and when you test the wine from here or that side of the slope, it's not the same. So it's the soil, it's the climate, it's a winemaking technique. A lot of parameters can be put in the forefront of what will drive the style of wine. But remember, it's wine variety, it's Chardonnay, okay? So it's interesting to see the expression of Chardonnay from here to here, okay? Because it's not far, and it's different, okay? Having said that, this is just speaking about terroir, you have to speak about a landscape as well. 3 weeks ago, I was in the Ningxia region in China, which it's like a desert, you know. And when you have such a landscape, it's difficult to speak about terroir. I don't know how to sell the terroir with, when you go to Sahara, not really. So you need something to speak about, okay? Okay, so that was, that was for Chablis. Now, and I'm just sharing with you one approach. I mean, you might agree or disagree. That's not a problem. This is how they are doing. And not only in Chablis, in France, I mean, it's quite obvious that a lot of regions are doing that. And of course, in other countries, certainly like Italy and even Slovenia, I'm sure that it's a way of selling the terroir. So now we are going to scale down, and that will show you the complexity. So to scale down, we are going now to fly to South Africa, okay? And I'm going to use some examples. And I'm going to take as a variety Sauvignon Blanc. Because Sauvignon Blanc, it's easy. Sauvignon Blanc, it's a variety which is somehow complex, which can give wine which are complex, but most of the time the wines are tropical or pyrazine. Pyrazine is asparagus. So it's a wine which can be two-dimensional. And it's easy to analyze some molecules. Well, I'm just looking at those guys who did a lot of job on what I'm going to present to you. But with Sauvignon Blanc, you have interesting aromatic indicators that you can use to describe the wine and to see if what you do in the vineyard will change the composition and the style. So I will present you a first study here that we did with Distel. Distel is a big company, the biggest company in South Africa, and I was consultant for them. I did a bit of work for them because I spent 4 years in South Africa. I'm going to drink a bit of water before Sauvignon Blanc. And what we did, we wanted to see how the temperature at the macroclimatic level can impact on the style of wine. So for that, very simple, we did like a lot of people are doing. We took bottles in a shop or from a Distel company from various regions, from warm to cool or temperate, because you have cool and temperate climate in South Africa. It's not only warm, okay? And then we did use the panel from Distel, the winemakers from Distel, And we ask them to classify the wines according if they are tropical or if they are herbaceous, okay? And then, of course, you have the borderline wines. And after they did a bit of statistical work, and obviously, just by selecting the bottles and doing some proper sensory, the panel was able to differentiate the warm Sauvignon Blanc from the cold, temperate Sauvignon Blanc. So we go from tropical to green, okay? Just at the macro scale. So this is a way to show you how the macroclimate can impact. Nothing to do with the soil or the clones or the cultural practices. We just took the bottles. So we don't know how people did manage the vineyard. We just took the wines according to the climate, okay, the regions, okay? Does it make sense? Yep, ça c'est clair? Bon. Allez, on continue. So, this is just an example on how the climate can impact, and I think Guillaume did the same in Australia, and comparing some Merlot and Cab, it was mainly Cab with Bordeaux, and you find the new indicators of Cabernet Sauvignon typicality in Australia. That's something which is interesting as well, because we can still do research and find aromatic indicators of typicality, okay? That's something, people are working hard on that, okay? So now I'm going to downscale, and I'm going to show you how we can change the typicality, always using Sauvignon Blanc because it's easy, at working with the macroclimate, downscale, okay? I show you mesoclimate, let's say macro-mesoclimate. Now we are going to downscale. And this is a work that has been done by Katia and Guillaume again. So, and for that, I'm going to just introduce some cultural practices like canopy. And the canopy is important, or training system is something which is important, because the training system is a tool to manage your vineyard. I consider the training system as a tool. So, again, as I said, here in this story, what the guys looked after is methoxypyrazine, which are responsible of these green characteristics, and thiols, which are responsible of tropical fruit, grapefruit. Okay, you know that. And well, I don't have a lot of time. So here, what we did is we did compare a shaded situation at the bench level, 100% of shaded berry, with 100% of here exposed fruit. Okay, it was an experimentation, just to see if by opening the canopy, putting more light, in the same vineyard, so in the same mesoclimate, by changing the microclimate, okay, by putting more light at the bench zone, it was possible to change the style of wine. Okay, so in the same place, and obviously yes, because the panel was able to recognize the wines from the open canopy, and they were more tropical. From the wine from the shaded bunches that were evaluated as more green. So meaning that, what does it mean? It means that from the same terroir, the same site, let's speak about site, from the same site, for the same variety, if you change the bench microclimate, you can change the style of wine because you interfere with berry composition, and therefore with wine composition, and therefore with wine styles. Okay? So, meaning that from a single vineyard, you can have 3-4 different wine typicality, wine styles. You can produce a green wine, you can produce a tropical wine, you can blend, having something a bit more complex. But it's a bit more complex than that, and to show you that after this speech you will have more questions than answers, and then that's a target, it's for you to have more questions than answers. I will show you an experimentation we did with Distel, again, this company, on Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin. And what we did is, we did a sequential harvest. It's exactly what Guillaume presented today, yesterday on the red varieties. We did the same on the white varieties for Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin, meaning that from the same plots, we did harvest sequentially, so 3 dates or 2 dates, okay? Sequential harvest. We did harvest at 2 or 3 different dates from the same vineyard. And we did compare cold and warm, or temperate and warm. Same story, okay? So for the evaluation of the wine, so it's based on sensory, we did use what we call a napping. And I suppose that you know what napping is about. So you classify the wines according to you do a hierarchization of the wine on a nap. And then after we have asked to the panel to do a free description, to write descriptors. So for example, if the wine is tropical, imagine you have a sheet of paper, and it's like a square. So if a wine is green, you will put it here. If a wine is tropical, you will put it here. And we have asked the panel to write 3 descriptors, 3 sensory attributes. Boom, what they think, what they smell, or, okay? And the results are the following. So this is, first of all, by doing that, you see that the panel was able to classify, using the napping, the warm. They were able to differentiate the Sauvignon Blanc from warm areas and the Sauvignon Blanc from cool areas. That's something we already know, according to what I said. What is interesting here is that now, within the warm and cool Sauvignon Blanc, the panel was able to classify the early harvest date and the late harvest date. So not only the panel is able to assess if a wine is coming from warm to cool just because it's tropical or pyrazine, but they were able as well, for both climates, to differentiate the wine according to the harvest date. So as Guillaume said yesterday, harvest dates is very important. So meaning that we sit within a story where the climate will be a driver and the harvest date will be a driver. So you have 2 drivers. So how many styles or how many wine or how many typicalities or wine styles can you produce from such an area? So we go back to the definition. It's an agreement on the test. You know? Does it make sense? Okay, I do continue. So this, because it's a free description, I did free descriptions in South Africa on many varieties with a lot of winemakers. And it's very interesting to do free descriptions because people, they just put the attributes they find. And then, of course, you will find that you can have diverse attributes. So what they did here is to group the main attributes for both situations. So you see that the attributes which were given here are those one, and the attributes which were given here are those one. What does it mean? It means now that the harvest date seems to overtake from the climate. Remember, here, warm and cool. Meaning here, for warm and cool, then there is some common attributes, just because of the harvest date. Does it make sense? Okay. So, and that was the specific attributes for the warm and cool climate. Okay. This is just to show you that, speaking about sequential harvest, it means that you have an evolution of ripening over time, as Guillaume did present yesterday. And so you have that for the red, but you have that for the white varieties. So if I look here to just those indicators of ripening, pH, TA, Brix, look Brix. A lot of people are harvesting according to Brix. Look the difference here between the wines, and the distance between the 2 harvest dates is almost 1 week, 7 days, okay? You see that for the same vineyard, of course, just you can change, you can have an evolution of the ripening process which will give you two different styles of wine, having the stabilization of the bricks. It's almost the same bricks level. Okay? So when you harvest according to bricks, as Guillaume said yesterday, but you don't know where you are. So either you can be there or either you can be there. So those wines are different. Okay? So this is again Sauvignon Blanc, and in this situation, I don't remember why. No, sorry, I have to be a bit more precise. This is from the cool climate. Okay, this is a sequence from the cool climate. Sorry, I forgot that. And this is a sequence from the warm climate. And you see that in both climates you have a sequence. And of course, because it's warm, you have a bit slight increase in bricks here. But you see that from the first date, which is at this bricks level, to the last date, and so from this period to this period, you have almost something like 1 month. You see that you have an evolution of the ripening, and of course, if you know this evolution, and the company was interested by doing that, if you know this evolution, the recommendation is to harvest there, of course, because this is, you start here to lose the aroma, okay? You start to lose the aroma. So you see that within the same plot, irrespective of everything, just because of the harvest date, you change the typicality, you change the styles, okay? So, and then of course, these are the profile progression from linked to the harvest dates and linked to the fact that it's warm or, sorry, or cool. Okay, so just to finish with, this is an example on Chenin Blanc. So the same story, the panel was able to differentiate Chenin Blanc from warm and cool, and was able to differentiate the harvest date. And for Chenin Blanc, the panel did put some attributes as well. Okay? And then, same story, sequential harvest. And you see that here, you almost have quite the same bricks level, but you see that the aromatic evolution is totally different, almost for the same bricks level. And this is just 3 weeks, over 3 weeks. Okay? So speaking about typicality, I will ask you the question, when are you going to harvest? It's important. According to which criteria are you going to harvest, as Guillaume said yesterday? So if you harvest only according to some basic criteria, which is very important, to a point you perhaps don't really know where you are in terms of aroma. So 1 year you can say, oh, this is the typicality you have. The year after, because you will be there, because of various reasons, you will have another typicality. So speaking about wine typicality, we can talk about consistency. We can talk about stability over vintage as well. Okay? Does it make sense? Oui, voilà. So another example of Chenin Blanc, and of course this is very early and a bit too early, this is why you have these acidic notes, but still you see that within a low bricks level, the panel is able to really put tropical attribute as something strong. It's not only green, it can be tropical. This is warm climate, the previous one was cool climate, and you see that you have an evolution of the aromatic profiles. And for Chenin Blanc, I think you can choose this style or this style. So for this vintage, you have the choice between two styles, two typicalities somehow, styles, okay? And this is a Chenin Blanc, progression, okay? With those attributes. So it's a crossing between, again, cool, warm, and harvest dates, okay? This is now, so just to summarize, we went from like a French way of presenting the terroir and the wine typicality to something which is more linked to the South Hemisphere with a macroclimatic approach and then a microclimatic approach by changing something in the vineyard. And I just spoke about light. I did not speak about water and temperature, which can impact. And we spoke about harvest date, which can change everything from the same vineyard for a variety, okay? So, I'm going to the conclusion now. And so, just to try to summarize, the typicality of an agricultural product is its property to belong to a distinct type. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So, speaking about typicality, it's very important to know how, speaking about typicality, it's important to know, or it's important to establish where I'm going to plant the vineyard and for what I want to produce, okay? And then to produce, then this is where you have the know-how and the techniques and blah, blah, blah. Very important, the evaluation. For wine or for food, it's about sensory. Sensory is something that is, comment on dit indispensable? Compulsory. You need sensory. You cannot speak about terroir and typicality of a product or style if you don't practice sensory or test, okay? So it's important, sensory is very important, to be properly trained is very important, etc. And of course, we have to appreciate. We have to love food and wine. We have to appreciate. If you don't appreciate, that's another story. Okay, so again, typicality corresponds to an agreed test. Okay, so now you have three possibilities. Typicality is revealed. Okay, so you have a terroir and you have an analogical process or a food process which will reveal the typicality. C'est l'œnologie, comment tu as appelé ça tout à l'heure? C'est pas l'œnologie. Yeah, it's predictive analogy, meaning you have something which is fantastic and you just do something, the analogical process is smooth enough to preserve everything. You know, that's a bit like that. Now you can construct the typicality, meaning you use the terroir, the sites, like ingredients. For example, you have a Sauvignon from a cool climate and a Sauvignon from a warm climate, you blend. Or within the same vine, you have a Sauvignon which is where you do some canopy manipulation, like you remove the leaves, and within the same vine, you can keep some rows which are for which the bunches are shaded, and then you blend. So you know you can construct your typicality by blending sites and terroir and whatever you want. So this is more the European strategy to a point. This is the Australian strategy is more there. I mean, they use terroir and they blend, or sites. And then the last one, which is mainly used in the south of France or in South Africa, in Australia, these new countries, or they are not really new, is you do what the market is asking to you. So then you consider your sites as really an ingredient. The market is asking for a rosé, and this is why it's very important to characterize the sites. Because if the market is asking for a rosé, you have to know where to find the grapes to produce a rosé. Meaning you are not going to use your vineyard grade A to produce a rosé. You keep that for fantastic red, and you use the basic vineyards for the rosé, for example. Okay, so you have to know where the grapes are. Well, you have to know where to provide grapes. Okay. Voilà. I'm done. Thank you very much. A bit too much time, no?
Thank you very much, Alain, for your very interesting presentation. I hope your goal is achieved. I mean, to raise more questions than answers. So I would like to open now the discussion. If you want, of course, you can ask questions also in Slovene, and I will help to translate. So please, is there any question from the public?
Tine Tomažić, 3 questions actually. First, to please my ignorance, can you move a couple of slides back where you have the data about certain typicalities. You have a pH, which I can understand. I have no idea what's TA and what's degrees of B. So for people who are not into the winemaking, if you can comment on those data which are objectively measured. Secondary, I'm interested whether you perform sensitivity studies. So you mentioned the influence of the climate, of the soil, of the microclimate, and the harvest date. Which of those seem to be influencing more the typicality that comes out in the end? And the third one, maybe a bit outreaching, can you envision and how quickly that the wine would be at a certain point made synthetically, reproduced synthetically, so not using the century-old know-how and this philosophical approach, but rather determining the components and replicating it as a mixture of chemical components?
Yeah. So the first question, if I remember, so the pH is a representation of the wine acidity. The TA is the measurement of the tartaric acid with a classical method. And, Brix is Brix. And the U angle, it's a method that we use to assess the harvest date. For that, which is used since 10, 12 years. Well, for those who would like to use it, so there is a tool, and with this tool, from Veraison onwards, you know that from Veraison, for the white varieties, you move from green to yellow and orange, and this tool is used to assess that, and by assessing the color very indirectly with wine tasting or wine sensory, we were able to establish some very indirect link between the evolution of this U angle and the potential style of wine, meaning that when the majority of berries after Veraison are still green, you can expect to have a green wine, just to speak rapidly, and when the berries are yellow, you can expect to have something which is more tropical, and when it's orange, you are moving for a wine which is more terpenic, okay? Now, what was interesting with the slide is at one moment, none of those indicators were working, meaning that you can have a stabilization of the 4 indicators and you still have the ripening process, which is under evolution. So that's a very good point. And this is just to show that those indicators are certainly important, but we need to work more on, exactly what Guillaume said. Yeah, so that's thanks for the question, it's important. The second one is about the... Okay, so that's a $1 million question. Okay. Yes. Okay. So for that, I will answer looking at what we know according to 50 years of study on terroir. Okay. So I think there is a sort of agreement between the scientific committees and the scientific community and even the winemakers or the wine industry that I think water is certainly one of the most influencing abiotic factor, actually. Then you have the temperature, as we saw, cool, that's obvious. And temperature, speaking about temperature, remember that you can have warm day, if you have cool night, you will still have something which will be fine, which will be elegant. We cannot explain why actually, perhaps because of this gene expression. So to have warm day, if you have cool temperate night, poof, no, it's good. No, warm day and cool night, if everything is temperate cool, this is where you put Pinot Noir and some fine varieties. If the days are warm, but if you have a cool temperate night, you can still have a very interesting aromatic expression. If you are in a hot, warm climate, and if the nights are warm, I think that this is more for premium and bulk wine, if I may suggest. And I will not put white varieties on those climates, except for doing what? For doing sparkling. Yeah, for doing sparkling, this is what I will do. And I'm not the only doing that. So, did I answer a bit to your question? Okay, so that is, and we have still a lot of research questions on that one. The last question was about... Oh my God, yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really a question for discussion. I know that in America, actually, there is a company which is trying to produce synthetic wine. That's a reality, and it's a business. They are trying to do that. Where I start to be a bit, how can I say, not upset, but where I start to ask questions is, what they do is to sell what they want to sell, they say, okay, because we cannot afford, let's say, Dom Pérignon, you know? We cannot afford Grange because it's very expensive. They say, we are going to reproduce a Dom Pérignon and a Grange. So they are using big brands, you know, to try to copy. You know what I mean? May I be frank with you? This is bullshit. Honestly, that's just bullshit. You know? Because if they want to produce something which is synthetic, well, they have to invent their own. No, they copy. They are, okay, nobody is able to afford Dom Pérignon, so we are going to copy Dom Pérignon and we are going to sell cheap Dom Pérignon. You know what will happen? They will go in jail. They will go in jail. Recently, there were people in Russia, they did try to copy, I don't know which big great Burgundy. They got 2 years in jail. 2 years. They will go in jail. Yeah. Because Champagne will attack. I'm telling you, they will attack. All the interprofessional committee in France, if you try to copy, they have a lot of money to put you in the court. And the same in a lot of countries. So this is just to answer to it. But it's something which can happen. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Please.
Could you, within the concept of terroir, could you focus on the soil itself? And in particular, there has been a lot of talking about volcanic soils lately. And not only that, people talk a lot about minerality and so on in wines. And I think there is a lot of confusion.
Sure.
And I like to better know the relationship between the soil composition, not excluding all the other factors, but the soil composition and what we think is minerality.
Yes. So I will give you an honest answer, and perhaps, Guillaume, you are welcome to say something if you would like to, because this is an open discussion and that's not a problem. So my honest answer is, certainly you have a relationship between the soil and the fruit composition and the style of wine. Of course, it's obvious. If you put a Shiraz on a sandy soil, you will not get the same wine typicality than if you put a Shiraz in a clay soil. Okay, that's obvious. So we don't know now is it because of water restitution only, mainly water, mainly, not only mainly. Is it because of water plus nitrogen, because that's very important for berry composition and the yeast functioning? Is it because of water, nitrogen, and something else? And water, we know the importance of water in the soil and water restitutions. We know the importance of nitrogen and potassium. For the other minerals, we don't really know actually. So I cannot establish a direct link between soil composition and soil structure and style of wine. It's not direct, but of course the soil is interfering, mainly through what we know actually, it's mainly through water and mainly through nitrogen. Another important thing about soil, because soil is very important, is according to the health of the soil is very important. The soil is like gold. You need to have a healthy soil. You need to make your soil happy, because this will make the vine happy to a point. Meaning that if you have a poor soil, you will have a poor wine, if I may just try to. If you have a soil which is alive, you can get something a bit more complex. But except for few parameters, we don't really know the effect of those parameters. But certainly they are important. Another important point about the soil is the soil will impact on the root functioning. We don't know a lot about root functioning, but the soil will impact on the root functioning. Mainly the soil will impact on the fine root functioning. Each year you have fine roots, new fine roots. That's very important, okay? And the last point, the soil will impact on the albedo, you know, the light restitution and the temperature restitution. If you do cultivate a Shiraz in a shale soil, during the night, because of temperature restitution, At the microclimatic level, you have a specific microclimate because the shale will restitute the temperature. So the night will be warmer at the bench level than just, I don't know, 100 meters above. So that's important. It's another soil effect. And we know that in Fougères, where you have shale soils, and you have some specific, I did some measurements with my colleague there, you have some specific sites which are really a small terroir because of this temperature restitution. The same Grenache in Banyuls. During the day, the Grenache in Banyuls, it's for sweet wine, okay? So during the day, just because of the temperature restitution from the soil, during the day, the bench temperature can increase to 40 to 50 degrees. So this is impacting. So the soil is impacting like that as well. What is minerality? According to my colleague Dominique Valentin in Dijon, she did a very serious study on minerality. And to study minerality, she started to look at she went to the wine, she did read the article from the wine journalist or the article from the sommelier. And she did list the attributes which were associated to minerality, just doing a survey of what they wrote, okay? And she found 20 to 30 attributes, meaning that people were speaking about minerality, but in their head, behind that, they were not speaking about the same thing. And she found that they were speaking about 20 to 30 different attributes to describe minerality. So what is now the definition of minerality? I don't know. What do you want to say something on that? Okay, I'm just going to take what Guillaume said. There is no consensus, okay? So, yeah, there is no consensus. But when someone is telling me this wine is mineral, immediately I respect that, but I'm asking, but what do you mean? And you will see sometimes people do associate minerality to freshness, most of the time, okay? And after you have some people where they know that the grapes is coming from a chalky soil, they say, oh, I feel the chalk. Why not? Did I answer your question? But via Guillaume, we can provide you the publication from Dominique Valentin, and that's a very interesting publication, very interesting. So you will get few answers there. Yeah.
Thank you for your question. Any other questions from the public? No? Then, Alain, I would have a question for you. People have recently become really increasingly interested in notations of local distinctiveness, also in terms of terroir. Yeah. Do you think this is mainly a response to the challenge of globalization overall, or you would outpoint some other reasons behind this increased interest in local distinctiveness of products?
That's a good question. I'm going to try to answer honestly. I think that there is a market for distinct product. When you want to buy a sparkling, you buy a champagne, you buy a region, you buy an history. If you buy a red wine from Bordeaux, it's because you buy Bordeaux. You know? So there is a market for, I think there is a market for terroir product, and this market is increasing. Nothing to do, to me, nothing to do with climate change. It's just that it's traditional. I mean, tradition is important in our European countries, but not only. So
sure, more and more important, yeah.
And I agree with that. So there is no, it's not wrong to love our products and our country and to love terroir products because we want to eat healthy food. I don't eat at McDonald's personally. I don't like that. It's I love the good food and good wine and so I don't like junk food, you know. So yeah, I don't like that. It's so and so there is a market for that, you know. I don't think that it's linked to climate change. I think that it's just. It's linked to history. It's linked to health as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know. It's a question for discussion. That's a bit complex.
Okay, you did mention also other products related to terroir, like
Yeah.
meat and cheese.
Yeah.
Why do you think that still the term of terroir is the most linked to grape wine, and it didn't reach such an importance with other food and agricultural products yet?
Well, for cheese in France, you have a lot of research on cheese in France where they did show a relationship between the herbs which were eaten by the cows or the goat or whatever you want, and the cheese. So there is a relationship. You can have a sort of relationship for some meat, comme les agneaux du pré-salé. Je ne sais pas comment on dit ça en anglais. Bon, well, it's a specific sort of animals, it's a sort of goat, which is eating close to the sea some specific herbs with salt, and this is giving to the meat a specific taste. So for the cheese, the relationship with herbs is obvious. For meat, it's a bit more complex. For wine, it's obvious. For coffee, it's obvious, and for olive, it's obvious. What did happen for coffee and for olives? The strength of the wine industry is they have AOC, AOP, and the definition of that is you produce in one site, you transform in the same site, and of course you sell everywhere, okay? So now with coffee, it was political because it's produced in one site, and after you have big company, they buy everything and they mix everything. So what people are doing now is they have another way of doing, which is when you buy a coffee, and comment on appelle ces filières? You have specific, people now are using that to sell coffee coming from a specific site and helping people to live. I don't remember the name of such products, but that's friendly trade. Meaning that you have coffee from Jacques Vabre coming from a bit everywhere, but you have friendly trade where people read this, where they use that against the big company. The same for olives. When you buy olive oil in France, you have really to care because if the olives are coming, well, you can buy olives in Spain, in Tunisia, you get the olives in France, you transform the olive or you bottle the olive oil in France, and you can put product of France, okay? That's bullshit to me, of course. So what people are doing now is, and this is where you start to ask for an AOC or AOP. AOC is at the French level, AOP is at the European level. It's appellation d'origine contrôlée. It's you ask for that because, again, you produce your own olives, for example, in Nyons, and you do your own olive oil in the same area where the product is the same for the skirt. They are made, the big brands, they are making skirts in China, and because just they saw the button in France, they can make made in France. Okay, that's for it. So, you know,
Yes.
that's political and it's business.
Yes.
So fortunately, the wine industry were able to protect that. Okay, so of course you have some people, they want to destroy that. Hope they will not win because then we will be in big shit, I suppose.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I have a little bit more pleasant question for the end.
Yeah.
Let's say we are enjoying a great bottle of wine,
Yeah.
but we also have an average quality wine in front of us, and we have a discussion how much of site, let's say just soil and climate, is in the great quality wine comparing to identity of winemaker, and the same question, what we would expect in average quality wine.
Yeah. To answer,
theoretically.
Yeah, to answer to your question, I will say that, you know, and that is really well known, there were a lot of sensory or tasting organized with sommeliers and winemakers, where they asked them to classify like a Gris Chateau and just a simple wine. And it's always 50-50. The sommelier, they are able to put the table wine first before Gris Chateau. So it's very relative, very relative. So to answer to a question, I will take the example of Médoc.
Okay.
Médoc is, you have the Chateau Saint-Julien, blah, blah, blah. The Médoc, in terms of terroir, let's say macro, mesoclimate, pretty much the same. In terms of varieties, it's pretty much the same. So what is the difference between one chateau to another? It's the blend and the winemaker and the barrel, to me. Voila. They do contribute. So the Chateau Margaux is known because they are doing a style. And they are doing their own barrel. So they heat the barrel the way they want, etc. So it's a lot of know-how. Okay? So because, you know, in Médoc, I will say Cabernet is Cabernet, Merlot is Merlot. So it's the blend, the winemaking process, and the attention. When they harvest, we are working with them on harvest date as well, because now they want to get more consistency. So what Guillaume did present yesterday, it's a method which is used in Bordeaux, actually. They try it. Okay? So I try to answer, but
Okay, thank you. I think I will give the last chance to public. If somebody still wants to ask something, Professor Deloire.
Do you like my house?
So in this case, I would like to thank you very much for your presentation and pleasant discussion. And of course, thank you very much for everybody coming and be with us this pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you.